thanks everyone for coming and good evening. Those that have not met me before, I'm Ian Leeson, National Participation Manager at Australian Sailing. And welcome to the second in the series of the coach development sessions that we're facilitating between June and November, with one each month. The aim of the sessions is to provide you all here, so accredited coaches, with continuing development opportunities, and hopefully begin to create a community of connected coaches from across the country, across a range of classes and levels. This evening's session is, so the theme is creating and developing training plans in a club environment. And Trax Gordon, who's the New South Wales Performance Pathways double-handed coach, will be facilitating a majority of this session and presenting to start with, along with myself. During the session, probably about halfway through, we're going to try putting people into smaller groups. So basically, we've created breakout rooms. You will magically get put into those groups, and each room will have a theme to discuss amongst yourself and then present back to the group afterwards. When we get to that section, we'll give a bit more information about how that's going to work. But do bear with us because we're trialing this as a concept, so it might be a little bit loose, but we'll see how we go. And just a reminder again, for same as what I said in the first one last month, that there's a lot of experience in the room, and hopefully what we want is people to contribute. The more that you contribute and the more that you put in, the more you are going to get out of it. And equally, remember, again, we've got people who might have only been coaching for a year or so, and we've got people that have potentially been coaching for 20 plus years. There's vast knowledge, experiences in the room, and everyone has got something valuable to contribute, and everyone's got something that they can learn from another coach. So if you go into this evening with a bit of an open mindset, and a willingness to learn and share ideas with each other, that would be awesome. At the end of, I suppose, the formal hour as such, or slightly less, Trax and I will both stay on the call. So if people want to discuss anything further, happy to sort of have a bit of an open chat if anyone wants to around anything that maybe people could share with each other. So with that, I shall pass over to Trax to kick us off.
Yeah. Hi, everybody, and welcome, and thanks for coming along, and really appreciate actually the opportunity for this chance to connect with you guys. It's only recently that I've come into the Australian sailing system, and I've been on the in the coaching game now for 30 years. So Ian's just made me feel very old when he said 20. So yeah, I'm really excited to see the people who have registered for this program. I've read through the list, and the diversity of classes and of standards, I find really heartening to think that so many of the bases are covered in who's getting service now in this sport. And I'm very much looking forward to it. The breakout room idea, we've all been through death by PowerPoint through COVID. So I'm kind of keen to test this in this forum. We used it recently in an AIS program, and to be honest, it was I took more away from chatting with other coaches and my peers than I did from the content. So I'm not going to be offended if you take more away from somebody else in the chat rooms today than listening to me. But thanks for having me, and huge shoes to fill following on from Maddie J last month too. This being new makes us feel like when you put a topic up, there's so much that we have to cover, and there is. I'm mindful that we've only got an hour and I could talk about coaching forever. So I guess this will probably create more questions than answers, and I think that's okay at this point in time. As like Ian said, as coaches, we expect a lot of our sailors and our systems to, be open-minded and learn. And congratulations for wanting to better yourselves. Probably not, again, not from listening to me, but probably to look deeper within yourselves. So I'm a big fan of continual improvement, and our athletes and our sailors see it in us when we're seen to be evolving, and I think it gets us a lot more buy-in from us and our expectations of them. So it's awesome. A little bit about myself. We can start. One thing I'm no good at is technology. So Ian's actually running my PowerPoint today, so I don't muck that bit up. So if I have to prompt Ian for change of slides, it's me, not him. I've sailed all my life. Some people here on this call I have met before and probably know a bit about my background. I've been racing since a very young age and pride myself on doing okay at certain stages of my life. But when I was a teenager, I actually I was fortunate to be part of a sporting scholarship that was across a lot of sports. And we were actually introduced to coaching and sports science at that time, psychology, physiology, and sailing coaching wasn't a big thing then. So I really got excited by that scholarship and the jobs these people did. And it sparked my passion to go and study sports coaching at university, which again at the time was quite new. And when I left my time there, I was very fortunate to possibly become the first full-time employed coach, probably in Australia in the development space. It coincided with the Royal Prince Alfred Yacht Club kicking off its youth development program, which was when they were trying to bridge junior sailors and youth sailors into their yachting fleets. And I actually can't think back, except for, Olympic coaching and high performance. I don't know there was actually full-time development coaches. So there was not much to study or learn from. I felt like I had to forge my own way, and it's kind of shaped my style the whole way through. And it's created a passion of coaching people more than anything else. And I hope you see that as it goes on. Recently, I've joined into the performance pathway space in Australian sailing. I wish it had happened 20 years ago. My wife would have been a lot happier if I'd had a real job this whole time. But it has been 20 plus years in clubland, very much operating most of the time as a volunteer. So whilst full time, it's more been a passion project than a job, and I think you possibly almost invest more in it when you're a stakeholder. So I'm extremely grateful that Performance Pathways has come along. I feel it's going to create opportunities for some of you guys in the future, and we are blessed by being provided with some really good information, and I'm hoping connections I build with you guys helps me be able to help you, not just tonight, but perhaps into the future with any questions you've got. So happy to move on to the next slide, please, Ian. And I think if people did any homework on me or my CV, and this is definitely what I'd put on my CV if I was trying to get a job, if I had to be quick and say, well, what have you done? I would rattle off some of these names. And I think a lot of them would probably appear in, most of you guys would know who they are straight off the bat, with people like James Spithill, Jace Lease, Tashi, and tonight Jim and Sean racing in Marseille in the Olympic test event. I think a lot of these guys popped up as overnight successes and very high standard sailors of their time. I'm extremely proud of these people. I'm also, though, probably equally as proud of a bunch of people who didn't get quite the same profile, but went on to be extremely good as sailors in the marine industry, or have taken the skills from my coaching and applied it to other sports or businesses and turned it into great success. So hopefully in your coaching, you start to realize that you play a big role in people's lives. And sorry, I'm losing my voice. I've been doing some winter yelling. So the last slide was overnight success, but the reality is all of these people in the picture before were parts of times when I've worked at clubs where we've had an extremely strong club program. So just as an example here, we've got James, and if we look in the back row in that group shot, he's about fourth from the right. doesn't have a black eye in this shot, which is nice. He was always in a football match or a boxing match or something. He was just a rough and tumble kid in a really cool group of people. And it's really important to understand that I think his success is very much based around that community. Who have we got next there, Ian? I can't remember. Jason Lease. I couldn't find any club photos of them, but they did come from a very strong club background as well at Palm Beach. That was a wonderful family-oriented, very volunteer-based club that's punched well above its weight many, many times through Olympic cycles in producing amazing sailors. So that was a good experience. But Jason Lee's very much community-based. Tashi I found on a soccer field. She could kick a ball amazingly well and just do. She looked like she could repeat things a million times, and so I took her for a sail. And within 2 weeks, we decided this is what we're going to do. But again, from a very strong club program, she emerged, and again, everybody around her, super important, and that environment was very carefully nurtured to make sure that she did very well out of it. But we actually had great retention from everybody else. Jim and Sean, same deal. They're both in that little Opti group there somewhere. Before any of these people had won major championships, we were already working together in the club environments. And yeah, they're just people I'm enormously proud of. But just the moral of the story was they came from very, very healthy clubs, and a lot of care went into that. So hopefully I get that message across tonight with a few few methods on how we do it. But very much looking forward to learning how you go about it too. Something that's come pretty naturally to me, I've learned, but I'm really glad that it's being nurtured into all of the coaching staff at the Performance Pathway and High Performance area, is to really look deep within ourselves and look at why we do what we do and possibly how we're going to go about doing it. So when I think back to my sailing beginning, I had one dad, but I probably had 50 fathers by being at our local yacht club, and I was raised definitely in that community. So my takeaway from that was that it was going to be really important to give back. Whatever I took from all of these people, and they wouldn't have a clue how much I appreciate their time, but it inspired me to make sure that that's what I became for other people, and coaching was going to be the tool. So I take my coaching very seriously and my coaching competence. Another thing from my reflections of my youth is that when I look around today, the people in my age group who still enjoy the sport, some of them were competitive, but there was a lot of competitive people who don't participate anymore. But everybody who still does participate in sailing reached a very high level of sailing competence in their youth and development stages, and that's something that stuck with me forever. And so my coaching philosophy is very much around creating environments where it's about competence. It's about being very motivating and very holistic. And my training environment takes into consideration the big picture, especially surrounding how long it takes to really master this sport, and how can I make someone want to go through that journey. Even more so than the pictures before of the top sailors that I've worked with, this picture is probably one I really enjoy looking at, and it's because somewhere in that shot's my son, and I wanted to teach him how to sail at a club that at the time wasn't really strong, and I could have easily have taken the route of just teaching him how to sail, and he would have won in a couple of boat fleet. And that didn't excite me much. And it was all about connecting with a club that had a TACA's program, but not much just above it at the time, and really putting a huge effort into testing myself in how to retain those sailors and what I could do with them in terms of how I would teach, what I would teach, what the year would look like. And this photo's a bit of a representation of retaining almost every single person out of the TACAs program, out of the TACAs 3. And this photo was taken during an AP at their first their first away regatta in Canberra, and I think it was about 2012. It was a very loud time on the rib, but it's a very enjoyable picture to reflect back on now, for the reasons that are on the next slide. So this club training program, since what this particular group on this rib, I don't think we ever won a major Opti championship. We might have won a few little ones, but there was definitely not the goal. But we had an awesome time in our junior sailing, and it was very much competency based. All but one of these sailors went on to sail at an international level in multiple classes, in the 29ers and lasers and Hobies and Nacras and 29ers, and I've probably missed some, to be honest. They've been youth world sailors and world champions, Olympic campaigners. There's a Sail GP sailor on there. There's international match races, Sydney to Hobart sailors, current sailors in my daily training environment now at NSWIS. And every single one of those people today is still active in boats. And I hear a lot of stories about retention at club levels. And when I think back to this picture and some of the methods we used and philosophies and the care of planning that went into this group, it's something it's probably my biggest achievement, but people wouldn't necessarily, you wouldn't put on your CV, but personally I carry this one as possibly my favourite moment. So I've been asked today to come in and talk about training environments for clubs. We could go down so many rabbit holes, and I didn't want to go down anything about periodization or race planning. And I think people can reach out to myself or to each other to get a lot of that stuff. It's quite generic. Probably more just talk a bit about my philosophy and then use the second part of the session to more discover yours. But I think the big one that as a coach coming into some of the roles that we do at club level, I think people only see when we deliver a session, people see a half to a third of the work that really needs to go into the delivery. And a massive part of what we need to be doing is planning and trying to work out what it is we're supposed to be producing. So whenever I'm going into a club, trying to work out what the strategy is for the training we're going to offer is just, it's the only place to start. And I'm a bit taken aback sometimes that this doesn't occur enough. And just with some simple questions, I can often walk away just thinking there's a lot of good intention here, but the execution can't work. So I'm hopeful that we realise that for us to be effective, whether we're paid or volunteers, that we just have to be so clear on what it is we're supposed to be doing. And it ends up that we can just keep chipping back to that idea every time we have to make a decision, so we don't become too impulsive or acting too much on a whim. Again, I see a lot of that, and that's a feature of clubs because of the fact that we run with committees and volunteers, that it's very easy for things to get quite loose and change just every couple of years. And a good program really has 2 or 3 years before it will start to chug along. So you often see club programs challenged by constant change. And so to be ahead of the game and to learn to be respected for your expertise, I think is a real challenge. And I think, Ian, you mentioned that Ash Brunning later in the series will be how to talk with stakeholders and clubs and classes. And I think that'll link nicely with this, plus the coaching content that comes along.
Yes, yeah,
so
definitely.
Part of our strategy for me is always, trying to consider what we're trying to build and what with the end in mind. So it could be that I'm walking into a club that's empty lawn and we need to fill the fleets. So where would I start? What do I want it to look like? How big a fleet sizes might I want to see? What standards? What am I preparing them for? And then it helps me work back to actually what's going to be important today. So if I was working in a fleet that was decimated everywhere, I'd obviously go back to the juniors. If I came into a club and recognized there was a hole in the program somewhere, I would look to fill that hole, or they're looking to elevate the standards in a certain area. But if you don't know what it is you're trying to finish up looking like, there's just no way you can plan out today. So it's super important. I don't want to get into debates on what fleets need to be offered. I've got a huge respect for all classes, and I understand that different venues perhaps need to have different fleets, but I do promote the idea that we've got to work out what is practical for a club and what's practical for the sailors and what's sustainable in terms of creating longevity and affordability, and what's progressive. So does, as a club, what we're promoting going to link with something? Can we build a chain that's logical? And I don't think there's a one piece fits all. I've got views on how to make really good sailors, and I've got a really good view on how to do it for my region because I've got a lot of experience. But I do respect that different regions have different challenges. Resourcing is a real challenge in clubland, and I've run my own program for many years. I know as good as anybody what it costs in terms of time, equipment, and money to run a year-round program. It's not cheap, but what's the lifetime value of who we're producing is what I always come back to. So it's a really important. I understand we've got to balance it out, but and it is very resource rich, but the reward on the other side can be exceptionally high. How are we going to transfer our knowledge? We shouldn't be sitting. One of the reasons why I want to sit here today is to prove that I'm not a vault. How can I make sure that the person sitting beside me is learning from me as much as I'm learning from them? How do we develop our coaches, and what strategies can we use when coaching is thin? The challenges of committees and clubs, I think we can all tell stories on that one, and I'll leave that one alone for now because we'll be here forever. But I do share that challenge. It's a big one. And also, lastly, like, where do I turn for my own development? I want you to all think about that. We're not experts. We're facilitators. We're influencers. It's very quick that the sailors we work with become better than us. Otherwise, we're not doing our job well. So where do we go to get our information? And I don't have all the answers for that. I just want you to think that we just constantly need to be learning. The big thing for me, and it hopefully is no secret, is that I pride myself massively on building just exceptional sailors. And my pride comes from diversity in the types of sailors that I do end up producing. So I'm not class specific. I have a couple of roles where I wear class hats, but I don't really feel that I'm that skilled in any particular piece of equipment. I do think that I can take a sailor and just turn them into a really good sailor, and that is something that it's all about the basics. And how I motivate people in that space is, when they're coming to the session plan, I'll just say, well, we're going to do the same training session James Spithill's going to do today. And they get so excited thinking they're moving up. But ultimately, if you watch all the America's Cup recon, all he's doing is pointing the boat accurately in the direction to the wind, and he's keeping it at a very steady angle of heel. So as soon as I tell them we're doing angle of attack and angle of heel again, they realize that that's what he's up to as well. But I do put a lot of time into the basics. People keep coming to me with questions on how they can get around it, and the answer is you can't. It's critical, and we have a tendency of moving off the basics way too soon, in my opinion, with club all the way through. I'm finding it, even at the performance pathways and Olympic level, we're having to go back and teach things that I took for granted that I worked with at 12-year-old level. So I just don't be afraid to really produce sailors who are just really solid at sailing. The racing will be so much easier down the track. Finding ways to challenge and support high levels of skill development. It often means we're having to repeat something, but if we're clever, we can disguise it and find various ways to put the same tests in front of the sailors, but in a different way that keeps them engaged. We want sailors to be very curious. We want them to learn to communicate with us and with each other. And we want them to be able to measure success via competency measures, not race results. And if we can train them how to do that, we're going to get a growth mindseted person who is really clear on whether they're getting better or not. And I think that's a key challenge in sailing, especially when some of our curriculums and courses promise a lot. And we know as coaches it actually can't be done. So we've got to teach these sailors actually how to recognize they're going forwards. As a club coach, I think it's really important that we create training structures that are consistent, not how you need to do it the way I do it exactly, but the way you do it should be the way you do it time in, time out in certain areas. Part of it is being very clear on why we're here today, recognizing that you can make the mistake of getting too detailed, but if you walk into a training session, I think it's really important people know what they're going to get out of today, and that you can then deliver content that's appropriate to those objectives, and an opportunity to reflect and learn in a safe space, which we'll touch on a little bit later. Motivation's a really cool one. I've put a picture here. Every now and then you'll see a 29er kid or a 420 kid who the crew can trapeze on their handstand. Here we've taken a very high level team in a 49er and we've managed to get the skipper and crew doing it. And I put that slide there, one, because it's amazing skills. Give it a go if you haven't tried it. That took us many goes. But it was a way of just taking two very highly, they just love challenge, and so giving them something that was very difficult to do was, you know, something these guys still talk about today more than most of their racing feats, that we could actually just pull this off. So motivation for me is the pairing of challenge and ambition. And if you think back to a lot of people and sessions that you've had that have both succeeded and possibly failed, it's usually this equation that is the key. So if we take somebody who we've learned is quite ambitious and we don't set much challenge for them, we're not going to get engagement. And at the same time, if we just expect everybody to be ambitious and we set the challenge too high, we're going to lose a group of people. So that shapes how I would talk to a group, but definitely would shape how I talk to individuals within a group. And if I had an opportunity to split groups, like I had a large pool of people and I had to somehow service multiple groups within, many times I have played with the idea of separating people based on motivation more than ability, and often got a better outcome as a training coordinator. So out of a session, I can get more probably using motivation and ambitious goals. Briefing and debriefing, it can be a little challenging at the beginning as coaches to put on display our knowledge. And I don't feel like, I think the beauty about working in the fundamentals is you don't need to know a whole lot. As long as you're clear at the beginning of, you know, that selling the need to be solid on basics, letting your experience in that area grow, not feeling too much pressure to get too technical. But making sure your briefings are consistent. That is like, they know it's coming. They know kind of how long it usually takes. They know you'll definitely be starting on time. And they know that it's important because you're going to outline what you're going to do. And I think that's a super important part for them to start processing real time and start learning on the, you know, from the very beginning. If we're going to do briefings and debriefings at all levels, it's really, I've seen many approaches here. Some people are quite formal, some people are quite loose. You've got to be an authentic version of yourself, but friction will occur, and friction can be really good, or it can be very harmful. And I think as coaches in the club environment, we've got to be controllers of this friction. And intellectual friction is very, very powerful. It's where people can check and challenge each other around what we're working on, issues that happened on the water, how we're learning, what we're taking away. But at the same time, we've got to be very skilled at eliminating social friction. And if we do that, it creates extremely strong club bonds. It's a vitally important coaching tool. We've got to be really, really skilled in our briefings to be able to paint a clear picture of what good would look like today. It won't look like winning. It might not even look anything like what we want the finished result to be. But if we can just paint the picture of in 3 hours' time, if we can do this, then we've succeeded. We've got to be very good at our session planning that allows our goals to, be possible. And we've got to be really excited by the idea that not every drill has been invented yet. I'm really enjoying, I live 50 meters from where I used to work. I'm really enjoying the half-hour drive to work now where I actually get to invent new drills. And we're doing almost a new drill every single week where I'm testing an idea of something we're working on. And the sailors love it. So I urge you to be very, very creative. It's the way we get diversity into the sailors, and they love it. And we've got some very cool drills that I'm pretty confident no one else in the world does. But it's not that we just do a drill. The drill has a very clear purpose. However, when we're on the water, sometimes we don't always get the conditions we want, or something happens, and we have to have solid plan Bs. And our sailors have to be conditioned to the idea that we're doing a bit of a flip, but it's a flip with a purpose, and I've got a good plan for the challenging conditions that we've got, and we're still going to get something out of it. So I get strong buy-in when I flip a program on the water that for whatever reason we just can't do the plan A. But the solid plan B should be in your head, and you should have a solid menu of them. Our debrief environment, we hear the term safe space a lot, and it's a very important thing for children and young adults. And we get to a place where if we get the social friction and intellectual friction equation right, we can have debriefs where people walk into my ones knowing that they're going to speak possibly more than I am. They're going to be able to articulate their lessons, and that everybody around is going to respect and listen. And I'm more a facilitator of a debrief environment. It's my opportunity to check in on what they think has been learnt, and a super valuable piece of the puzzle. So any clubs where you're sort of rolling out a session and then sending everybody home, my feeling is you're missing the opportunity to really knuckle down and get the proper learning done. And this can be a very motivating tool if the kids are finding, or if sailors are finding this bit a chore. I encourage everyone to look in the mirror and try and work out why, and then really perfect this skill so that people want to turn up, and you feel that they've walked away better for the experience. And the debrief for me, I think it came up last week where it was about guiding sailors to answer questions, or to know the answer of a question before you ask it. And I remember that brought up some intellectual friction, and I had opinions on both sides. But when I'm coaching young sailors to prepare them for the drive home and the dinner table for the parents, and the parents comparing notes with other parents, I, as a bit of a strategy, I kind of arm the sailors with the answer to the "How did you go today?" question, so that at the end of a debrief, if we've been working on spinnaker drops or buoy room or whatever, I'm like, don't forget today when you get asked, how did today go? The answer is, today I learned this, so that parents in particular don't get conditioned into comparing results or taking conversations in directions that stray from where it was that you wanted the lesson to be. And I find it really good. The parents get back to me and go, I can't believe my child can articulate so well something so complex and simple at the same time. So yeah, if you're not using that as one of your strategies, it's something that I've found that works extremely well, and it's a way of just keeping everybody on point. My favorite thing of everything is mentors. They just, in club land, all the way through, I think, to the highest of high performance, mentoring is critical, and it shaped me and what I learnt. I think people get way more out of interactions with coaches than they will ever be able to pay for or even thank you for until many years down the track. So something I use to my advantage is that as I'm talking with a young sailor and imparting knowledge, is making them realize that I'm going to call upon them to help somebody else. And it's a conversation I have from the outset. You know, I can be with a 12-year-old and say, look, you're going to get a lot out of this opportunity. The deal is that you're going to help me build 10 more on the other side. And it's a way of creating people who are very humble and grounded, know where they came from, and willing to share. So I'm very proud of the people that I call upon, and the pictures I used down the bottom here. I've used, I think, Tash in the example the whole way through. Her story was when we moved her into the 29er that Jim Colley was a couple of years further advanced than him. So on the left, we got Jimmy taking her for a send. She's only 13. She's just, that I'll remember that sail forever because it was quite fun. But it was very windy, and she just grew a meter in that 2 or 3 hours. And it wasn't me. It was Jim's influence. And on the right, I remember we had Jason Lisa in town for a few weeks, and he came out with the girls, and he said the same things that I said for a month, and in 2 hours he had them hearing what I couldn't get across. So just incredibly powerful. And in the middle, we've got Tashi taking all of that knowledge from those two people and imparting it on one of my 29er young girls teams that I think went on to be the 29er women's world national champions. So they kind of they take the lessons from these guys, and we use it as a powerful tool to keep passing it down the chain. And what I've learned about sailors and heroes, if you took if I brought James Spithill today into an Opti group, they wouldn't even know who he is. But you'd only have to look a couple of years above this Opti group to realize that somewhere in there's somebody with huge influence, and actually they're very powerful people. So clubs need to do a super job of their mentoring programs. I think it's more important than their coaching programs, to be honest. If we just start getting into the nitty-gritty of clubs, something that I work on very hard is finding ways to make coaching offering a year-round exercise. I'm a massive fan of encouraging people to try other sports, but if we give them the whole winter to try another sport, we run a huge risk of them just not coming back, or coming back 5 kilos heavier, half a foot taller, and definitely very, very stale on their skills. And if we expect them to even be close to picking up to where they left off, it doesn't work that way. We get huge retention problems if we think that we can just run an 8-week course here, an 8-week course there. And I always try to go into a new season ready. So not ready to win, but ready to enjoy what the season has to offer. So if we're even looking at Greenfleet or intermediate, especially Greenfleet into club level sailing, I've had huge, that group of Opti kids around the rib, that was a winter-long program, not a summer program. And they came into the season ready to enjoy club sailing, not sort of learning to really battle, but really enjoy what clubs could offer. So really, yeah, I think embrace the idea that people are going to try other activities, but we're not competing anymore. There's a lot of arguments about classes versus classes. It's sailing versus a million other sports. When I was young, I was part of 4 or 5. There was only 4 or 5 alternatives, and now there's hundreds. And now there's YouTube, so you can watch an activity on YouTube, and you can be practicing it in your bedroom. You can be practicing it on the playground, but sailing's not one of those activities. So our competitive advantage has to be quality club coaching, and we are competing against just a massive learning opportunities in other areas, and I think that's where I'm inspired. If I think I can convert a child into a love of sailing at this point in time against all the other distractions, I think that's a job well done. And so we've really got to look deeply at our skill set there. Especially in clubland, and especially I read on the registrations, there was a lot of people working in the green and intermediate fleet space. And the challenge in that for me is when they're not able to sail in a diverse range of conditions yet, what do? What we can't do is cancel. It's parents are conditioned in many sports to wake up on a rainy day and realize soccer won't be on, and so they're already mentally preparing themselves for what they're going to do for the rest of the day. But that's the norm in that sport. Sailing, they're going to be able to sail in 25 knots soon. It's sailing, you're going to get wet, so raining doesn't matter. And we've got to be super careful that our approach to difficult conditions doesn't shape sailors and their behaviors, because once they get to enjoy rain and 25 knots, and I can make someone love that, we can't ruin that before we get people to that level of competency. So as coaches, we've got to have strategies for this. There are on-water things you can do in certain difficult conditions if you've got a really good plan. There is in the photographs here, I think. I've got two of my young. Oh, Tashi's in that picture too. We got two young girls, very young, doing boat work and rope work and splicing and stuff that, you know, people pay money for, and we've got little kids that can learn it. When I was young, I used to be able to varnish without leaving a brush stroke, and today we think that all these skills have been taken away, but it's the ball's in our court to actually make these kids holistic. We should be videoing as much as we can, and we should be using experiences with other sailors to shape new sailors. So that was a photograph of all those hard drives I took last week just for another picture, but there must be 20 or 30 terabytes there of all these guys growing up. And I can call upon on a windy, rainy day a chance to show some of this stuff. So as coaches, please pull out your phones and video. Please find ways to make a difficult day productive. It's super important down the track, and probably one of our best learning methods too. So don't be afraid of that. Underselling and over delivering. It's a really hard one to get right, because as a sport, we've got to promote ourselves amongst other activities where you can grow quite quickly. But I don't think it works out too well in the end. My philosophy is always find a way to make something sound quite ambitious, but deep down know that I'm going to blow that out of the water. And I do my best to never try and make something sound like I can't deliver on it. And in coaching, I think that's super important. An example would be that if you read a curriculum and it said within 8 weeks we're going to have you tacking, jibing, buoy room, this, and this. It's like if we don't know that can't be done, there's a challenge for us. But the reality is that if we say all that and then we can't deliver on it, the poor sailor, whether they were going to be good or not, will look at the end and just go, I'm not good enough because I haven't even met the most basic things that they said. So I'm very, very clear, and I try to be as best as I can selling the long game of getting good at this and why that's fun, and making sure that what they walk away with is better than what I say, and what I say is still carefully mastered to be still pretty good. The other thing with overselling and under delivering, I think you've got to be really clear on what it is you're trying to create, especially around fleet sizes. If you don't need 50 boats in your fleet, don't say it. Aim for something realistic. So getting your critical masses sorted out, getting your sustainability sorted out, being clear on your skills, and put your best. And one of the big ones for me is the more you can put your experienced coaches further down in the lower levels, the higher the returns. And there's nothing more so than when I work in high performance, where really we're carrying water bottles and sunscreen and muesli bars. Like, honestly, at that level, if I think there's something I can possibly say that they don't know, I'm kidding myself. So my expertise actually spent. If you've got somebody who's highly skilled, you've got to motivate them and make them see the value. And I know that can be a challenge to work down in the green intermediate space of any class. But if you ever get that opportunity, you can get a lot of good work done, and prevent a lot of average coaching from occurring. So, yeah, much better to start with something great than be fixing challenges. So if you rate yourself as a good club coach, challenge yourself working down into the lower levels. It's very rewarding. It's very difficult. But I choose to be in the pathway space because I would rather build something amazing for somebody else than maybe take on something that I wished I'd been able to influence sooner. So that's enough of me talking. I'm glad. I think you're probably all glad. But I think the thing is here is what we want to do is just put you randomly into some rooms. The goal here is not to solve the world's problems, but maybe for you guys to start hearing voices that you hadn't heard from before and start to respect their opinions or their knowledge, and realize that maybe this won't be your only interaction you ever have, and that maybe you feel like you can reach out in the future and connect with somebody and test their ideas. I have a pretty strong community of people that I bounce ideas off. This is just a way of getting you guys started. So the topics are a bit random and broad, but what I want you to do is you'll be assigned a room. I know these things sometimes get a little bit loose. I want you just every now and then bring it back to the reason why we've put you there. And the goal is that you'll come back and just for a couple of minutes talk about what it is that the ideas you threw around. So how are we going to do this, Ian? Is it?
Hang on. Yeah. So obviously there's the room themes. Sue, hang on one second. I might just stop sharing my screen for a second because I can't see anybody. Sue Phillips, if you're there, did you want to give a very quick explanation of how this is going to work?
Yeah, so you will be asked to go into a room in a moment, and we have about 6 minutes for you to discuss the topics. Trax, I don't know if you just want to briefly say what each of the room topics will be to discuss. I'll also put it in chat as well, the questions for you. Maybe put that slide back up, Ian.
Yeah, no worries.
And then we'll give you about 6 minutes, and then with a minute to go, we'll give you a warning and you'll come back into the main room.
So there's the room's themes. So it will tell you in the room which room you're in. And the idea is, so there's not going to be anyone, neither like Trax may bounce in and out some of the rooms, but none of us are going to be there to facilitate. So the idea is that between you as a group in that room, you discuss the theme and see where it leads for 6 minutes. And then when we all come back to the main room, we will get one person from each room just to quickly present what were the key things discussed. Does that make sense to everyone?
Have a go at it, guys. I really enjoyed doing this part with the Elevate program.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
So in the chat are all the questions.
So I think Sue, with the magic of Teams, you're just going to allocate people, and everyone will just disappear, and then you'll automatically come back to this room when the 6 minutes ends.
So click on the button when it should appear on your screen.
Oh, there we go. So it's starting to put people in the rooms now. Beautiful. Oh, Bob hasn't got a room.
Oh. Bob, have you got a room?
Oh, and Karen
Oh,
needs a
and
room.
Karen. Hi, Karen.
What did I
See
do?
if I can assign you to a room. We're just going into breakout rooms, Karen.
Yeah. Well, the majority have ended up in
Okay.
rooms.
There you go. Should go. Click,
Oh,
click
there we
it.
go.
She
And
go.
then the two others need rooms
Oh.
as well, and we should be good.
Oh, because they keep
Turn the
going.
light out and you can move around.
Jill, I'll just assign you to a room. Oh. Did it kick you out, maybe?
Yeah, we got kicked out.
Oh, okay. I'll try and assign you a room.
I'd say this bit might be a bit loose.
Oh.
We got kicked out.
Yeah, that's okay. We're trying to put you back in another room again.
Come back in. Should go back in now. If you click on the minute.
You back?
Join.
Yeah, click on the join
Join.
button. So, Bob, I don't know if Bob is. Are you there, Bob?
Three others there somehow.
They're on hold for some reason. Put them in. I think for some reason they're still in the lobby.
Mhm.
That's Karen, wasn't it? I think they need to, Karen, if you can hear me, you need to click on the join button when it comes up. It's
Majority seem to have worked. So
yeah. Don't know what
Just a
happened
couple
with
We'll
these.
bring them back.
yeah, that's all right. I think because they were coming back automatically, will they, Sue? So it's just set on a timer.
Yeah, I can give an announcement with 1 minute to go,
Yeah, cool. That's all right.
or you can make an announcement.
I don't think they'll talk for a couple of minutes per at the end anyway. If they do, great. But if they don't, like the rest should be interactive. I feel like I talk too much anyway, but I just wanted them to be prompted by some key concepts.
Yeah. No, that's cool. I think we'll see. We'll give them
Yeah.
the full 6 minutes, and then when the group comes back.
See where the energy's at.
Yep.
Timing will be perfect. It'll go straight into the Marseille first
Oh, yeah.
race. Yeah.
Yeah. It's actually quite good we did stay in this main room because there seems to be a few where it's not working.
If there's anyone in the room that wants to participate in any chat, even in here, happy to make
Yeah,
sure
yeah,
they've got
I'm saying-
twiddling their thumbs.
Anyone that is online.
Karen's on hold. I don't know. I think it's their system for some reason. It's saying as the outside of Teams.
Okay.
It has assigned her, but and Bob is assigned a room as well.
Okay.
But-
Yeah, there is only those two that are not in a room currently, so.
This person is a meeting guest and doesn't have a Teams account. Now verifies identity.
Don't know.
Want me to give a 1 minute announcement?
Yeah, I reckon. Do you think, Trax?
Yeah.
Yeah, give them 1 minute to go and then bring them back, or if they're coming back automatically.
Oh, they're going to come back automatically.
Oh, there we go.
Mhm.
Perfect. Cool.
Mhm.
That's good.
I don't know how that worked because I got bumped out of whatever group Kate was with. And we
Oh, sorry, Karen. What happened there?
Right,
like,
I'm now in
"Yeah,
a
we're
different
about to
group.
run out of time."
Okay. Are we back on the home page or are we still in a different group?
No, you're
You're
back.
back
You're back
in the
in the
main.
main group now.
Right, that was very quick.
An
Apologies.
interesting experiment, Ian.
Yeah,
Yeah, you're
apologies, Karen. I don't know what happened. I bumped you out.
Is
For some
everyone
reason.
back now, Sue? That started. All the rooms should be closed now, shouldn't they?
Yeah, they're all
Yeah.
closed now.
Okay. Beautiful. All right. Well, hopefully that mostly worked. I know that there was a few technical issues where people didn't end up in rooms. Could we get just one person from, I suppose, a spokesperson from room 1 to just give the whole group here a bit of an overview of what was discussed and any kind of key themes and thoughts?
I'm happy to share.
Yeah, perfect.
So,
Whoever was in room
I was
1.
in group 1. We had a really good little group. I will share the bit that I shared. If that helps. Our topic was, how do you ensure, oh, hang on, it just disappeared. How do you ensure, sorry, I'm just getting the topic up. I took a screenshot of it. How do we ensure you are delivering to the needs and goals of your club group? Come up with maybe having like a shared document, maybe online, like a Google Doc, and then where the coach can have their goals and intentions of what they want to achieve, and then having the athletes debrief what they learnt, and then so you can have it there and you can see the progress throughout the sessions, throughout the season, and seeing that are you meeting their needs, and do we need to ramp it up or target specific topics?
Yep, cool. Anyone else from that room have anything just to add to Dante's information then? No? Okay, cool.
Thought that's a good one. Like I did, just quickly touching on that, like the needs, how do you deal with that being really diverse? So in a club group, like if you give the sailors the chance to say, well, what do you want to do today? How do you prepare for 50 different answers? And how do you not manipulate an environment? How do you guide their decision making towards them identifying their greatest needs? They're things I think that a good coach will be quite skilled at. So it's quite a good one because you'll get a lot of diversity in a club environment.
Cool. We've got someone from room 2. So obviously this is sort of touching on Trax's points earlier on in the session around sort of fundamental skills being important. So yeah, if someone wants to speak up that was in room 2 and sort of just provide what was discussed. Was anyone in room 2?
I can do that then if need be. So our topic was, how do you maximize fundamental competencies to maintain the motivation of the group? And we sort of just had a quick chat about like figuring out the competencies, gosh, for your particular group, because obviously wide range of classes and group skills and stuff. So figuring out your competencies, obviously pretty important. We just chatted about like a wide range of competencies, like sort of, and also finding fun inventive ways to sort of do those sorts of things, not just making it racing based, like making it more engaging. And then we also had a quick chat about mixed groups and the difficulties that go into motivating those types of groups and the levels that you might have in the same group. And that's sort of what we chatted about.
Yeah, cool, excellent. And I think there's room 4 hopefully has got some more bits to touch on around the varied skills and standards within a single program as well. So anyone from room 3 want to just give us an overview of what was discussed?
So it's Kingsley here. I'm not sure what room we were in, but we chose room 3, so I'll speak about it.
Perfect.
We had 2 people talk. Michael from Ballina and the issues around having a big current and all the kids particularly being swept out to sea. So has adopted the process of engaging in adult learn to sail and then using those adults as crews on other boats. So the focus was on building existing sailors with boats by giving them crews from the learn to sail area, and they've seen some good growth from 150 to 220 odd people. So that's awesome to hear as a process. Camille was a little bit challenged starting or working in a club with no kids and no instructors, and we're talking about some of the issues around that as to how you actually kick it off and get it going. From my own experience, one of the features that we've tried to do at our club at Avalon is when we run courses, they're for a whole season. A long tracks is the idea of it's a season, it's a year thing, it's not a short-term thing. If you're running a short-term 4 weeks, 6 weeks, even 8 weeks, where do they go from there? Surfing, soccer, there's a multitude of things to go for. So just like a soccer season, we've chosen at the early stages not to do winter, but certainly do it's a whole summer, it's a smaller group, there's a presentation, and next season you're almost expected to sign up and keep going. And when I was doing this some now 20 years ago at that club, we were getting 85–90% retention. So out of that process, which just makes a huge difference. And the other little clue there is engaging parents in the club so that they're engaged in the process as well, in any role you like, whether it be canteen, running around support boats, race management stuff, whatever it is, but get them involved. Sailing is a sport that has to have parents doing stuff, whether it be travel, whether it be opening the wallet, whether it be finding boats, going to regattas. It's a family thing. So let's, I think, get people involved as much as I can. And I must admit, I'm very pleased to see Tracks. Obviously, you're just a neighbour down the road, and both Tash and Jim both started with my kids in as crews. So right back in the early stage, gave them the fundamentals of sailing, and they've obviously taken it a long way. So yeah, I absolutely agree. Get involved at the low levels with experienced people. It sets the groundwork.
Yeah, great.
Yeah, they speak of you highly, Kingsley, and both those guys. And I think I'm an Avalon graduate too. That was one of the places that shaped me. So a lot of my passion for family-oriented clubs, and another thing it's not a drop and run. And one of my philosophies too is that my kids will sit in their circle and listen, but actually often, and I encourage it, my parents come in and listen. It's not a drop and run or stay away. I want them to be engaged so that their conversations with their kids are aligned to the ones that we're having. So yeah, well done for what you guys do. It's super.
Yeah, and I think just to add on to that as well, it's come up a couple of times throughout this evening, and you've just sort of highlighted it there, Kingsley, with your 2 points, is around building this community at the club, around having parents involved, and the programming being across a season rather than just a short touch, because by spreading it across a season, you create an environment that families and kids want to be at, which then becomes part of their life, which is probably how most of us in this call have become involved with sailing, that we've come up or grown up with that type of environment, and that's why we love it. So if as coaches we can help influence that for the next generation, hopefully we'll build more people to stay in the sport. So no, really good valid points there. And the last one, come up a couple of times, but dealing with varied standards and goals and motivations within a single program. I know Trax touched on earlier around grouping by motivation rather than ability, but keen to know what sort of strategies or thoughts coaches on the call and in that room discussed around dealing with those sorts of things. Who was in that room that would like to speak up? Anybody? Come on. Who was in that room?
I'm happy to have a
Awesome.
share
Thanks,
something.
Niall.
So yeah, we had a couple of different sort of ideas, and we kind of brought it down to some different elements with what goals there are amongst the group, particularly amongst obviously sailors' goals, which was the main part, but also maybe there's goals of the club or the coach and parents as well, the families. So we, particularly with the sailors' goals, which was kind of the main area that everyone kind of shared, was what are those goals? Is it more, some in the group might have top of the fleet aspirations, or do you have others that are there sort of part of that community, and what's the sort of the process with achieving those goals, and what's the pathway, the next step that those kids might be looking to next, and how do you you might see some kids or sailors looking to the next step and going, what do I need to do to get there, and others maybe looking at something for another pathway. So probably as coaches we need to look at all of those pathways and steps and say, what skills are needed and what can we do to structure that training that everyone will benefit around. And someone else made a comment about the coaches just getting to know and spending time, obviously consistency with spending time with those individuals as well, developing that relationship, understanding what those kids or sailors want or what they want to do and what motivates them.
Yeah, great. No, that's good stuff. And I think you touched on it a minute ago as well. It is often a fine balancing act between the goals and aspirations of the club versus the actual sailors and parents, because often the club sort of has got lofty goals that we want to create X, but as the sailors that might not match together. So there's definitely some key stakeholder relationship work that coaches need to perform in club environments, would be my sort of addition to that bit.
Yeah, I mean, Niall hit it by just at least carving out the time to learn. Yeah. I think if I'm engaged to be in a session from 10 to 1, you're going to find me on the lawn at 8:30, and it's strategically to build connections, to listen carefully, to then shape my ideas on what hat I'm going to put on today. If we come in just assuming where everyone's at and what they want, or what we think they want, we're not going to be effective. So the more we can collect data and shape our messaging, we can get people quite addictive to. You'll know when you're nailing it, because people will they will do anything to choose to be with you doing sailing than anything else. And I think a lot of care goes into creating that type of setup, and it's a very proud moment when you think you've got someone at that level. It's a big achievement for coaching.
Yeah, no, excellent. I'm conscious of timing. We're already 12 minutes over, but that's all right. If people need to go, but by all means feel free to do so. I think to sort of summarize, or not summarize, but just to sort of finish off now, I suppose the formal part is does anyone have any questions relating to the theme of tonight's session around creating development plans and training plans for club environments? Does anyone have any general questions that perhaps they either want to speak up or put in the chat or propose, and whether or not Trax or I know the answer, or whether there's somebody else in the room that knows an answer or could give a suggestion, hopefully we might get an answer somewhere. So if anyone's got any questions, please feel free to speak up or put it in the chat and then speak up. Any burning questions from anybody?
I'll throw one in. Trax, I love the mentoring of your sailors as they're going through with your younger groups. How do you balance that with the like the performance side of things, where like New South Wales Institute of Sport are pulling out kids and then they're working with them independently outside of the club environment?
Yeah, well, see, that's a big strategy change where that actually isn't occurring anymore. So really the NSWIS environment is now people who have made the decision to go down the Olympic path, where previous training kind of assumed that that would be the case and that we'd possibly find the cream only at the top. It's quite a lazy way, I think, to pick talent. It's more letting clubs do their role, and I think you know, hopefully through my example of what I did in Clubland was that I worked very hard to keep sailors at their clubs. I think they're vitally important. So the people now who find themselves in performance pathways have made the clear decision that Olympic sailing's where they're going to go. They're a lot older. They're now committed to their Olympic class, which is not a normal mainstream. And I think it's a very deliberate, good strategy. And the whole idea is that clubs and classes can invest more, knowing that they'll be retaining more sailors and you know, the lifetime value of the members. I'm 100% supportive. I've become involved in performance pathways because I believe that clubs have a much better opportunity now to nurture, you know, what will be 99% of their membership, and the ones who do aspire have more resources than ever to really chase big things. Yeah, I think it's a win-win.
Anyone else before we kind of, I suppose, officially wrap up?
Anybody who doesn't feel comfortable asking a question right now, as people get offline, if you want to hang around and ask something in a quieter, safer place, yeah, I've got sailors starting the test event at 8 o'clock, so I've got 15 more minutes. But at that point in time, Jim and Sean,
can I just make a comment, Trax?
Yes.
Trax, can I make a comment?
Go for it.
Yeah.
I thought the format that you put together was really good. A bit of feedback, and we needed more time in the breakout room because there was some really good stuff to share, but we didn't have anywhere near enough time to make the most of that. But the idea of that seems good. The idea of sharing, understanding things from other people's points of view is really good, because often I'm in Tassie, I'm in a small club, very isolated. So it was a breath of fresh air to hear other people's views and how they see things.
Yeah, this was a test tonight, and I think it'll be something that definitely goes and possibly becomes deeper ingrained. And you guys are the experts in this. It's really about bringing you guys together. I'm glad you said that, because I share your passion for that opportunity.
Yeah, that's great feedback, Matt. Thank you for that, because like Trax said, it was a bit of an unknown, and we were weighing up like, oh, do we go 5 minutes, 8 minutes, 10 minutes? And we sort of went for 6 in the end, because we thought, if people don't contribute, everyone's going to be sat in a room on their own talking, not speaking for 10 minutes. So no, good to know. Thank you.
Just a question in the chat, Ian, about the date for the next session.
Yes, so the next session is, yeah, good point. 1 second. The next session will be on the 8th of August, same time. And again, if you've already registered for the series, you'll automatically get an email for that next session with the meeting link in it on the day of that meeting, like you did this morning for this one. So you don't need to do anything else other than attend and click on the meeting link if you want to come to the next one. But yeah, so that's when the next one's taking place, which will be Brady Lowe and Jamie Slavely. co-presenting. Yeah, so if no one else has got anything further, as Track said, both of us are staying online if people want to have any other conversation until everyone's gone, or in 15 minutes time, so that then we can see how the racing's going in the test event. So otherwise, thank you for your participation. I would love to know, either put it in the chat or send me an email tomorrow of one thing that you might take from this session and you potentially could look to action in your own coaching practice, so that we can try and get it whilst it's in your mind. So keen to know what your takeout is from the session. And otherwise, thank you for your time.
And the recording will be available of this session.
Yeah.
It's been after.
Yeah, they're all,
Okay.
all the recordings will end up all together online.
Thanks
Thank you.
everybody for joining in.